Hey there, welcome to today's webinar. We are talking about church websites today, which I'm really excited that we get to dive into this topic a little bit more. Like you, most churches have a church website, and a lot of churches struggle with what to put on the website or how to make a website more compelling, or how do we cater to the right audience? How do we figure out who our audience is? We're going to talk about some of those questions and more in today's webinar. I would love to learn more about you. So if you are watching this webinar as a replay, in the comments below, make sure that you just let us know that you're watching. Tell us, what you are excited about when it comes to heading into summer, because I love that it's getting warmer. That has nothing to do with websites, but add a comment and I would love to meet you, get to know you a little bit as well. Let's get started. Today's webinar is going to be, I think, really helpful for a lot of churches. I hope as you watch this, you find it really beneficial. So let's just dive in. Let's get started now and talk about church websites. First, though, I want to give you just kind of lay the land out of what you can expect from today's information, today's webinar. This first part that we're in right now is introductions. So I'd love to meet you, and you can meet me a little bit. I'll introduce myself and who we are as an organization at Church Juice and talk a little bit about that. Part two of today's webinar is going to dive in a little bit into some of what we have said are some of the best church websites that are currently available this year. A few weeks ago, we put out a list of 20 of high quality websites that we think are something that you can gain inspiration from, learn from. And so we will talk about some of those, not all of them, but we will talk about some of them, what we like about them. And there are always things that you or any website could be doing differently. So we'll touch on that a little bit too. The third part, and probably why you're here, is we are going to spend a bulk of today's conversation talking about 6 principles to help you improve your church's website, to help your church website become more compelling, to tell better stories, to be a better design, to cause more people to be involved in the work of your church and your ministry. And then at the end, we'll spend some time answering some of your questions. So that is what you can expect. Today's webinar will last no longer than 1 hour. I want to respect your time. I appreciate you taking time out of your day today to hear from me, to learn about websites a little bit more. So let me just very briefly introduce myself. If we haven't met before, my name's Brian. I am the producer of Church Juice. Here on this slide, you can see some of my family. These are my 2 kids and my wife. We live in Michigan. And we are just enjoying life right now. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and so things are crazy, and I'm sure they will only continue to get crazier as my kids grow up. But I've been here at Church Juice for a little over 5 years. I started in 2017, and what I do at Church Juice is I produce what we create. So we are here to support you, to serve you in your church and in your role. And so my job is to make sure that we are doing that, and that we are doing that to the best of our ability. Before I worked here at Church Juice, I worked and continue to work with churches in the church. I have been in communications. I've also been in roles in the church like outreach and missions and overseeing weekend services, administration, operations. I've been in a wealth of different positions in the local church as well. And of course, today I serve in my local church still. And then I also have an education background in business marketing and management. And so that's kind of what I bring to the table here. I don't have all the answers, and I certainly don't pretend to, but we are trying to do our best to serve the church. And so one of the things that I love about Church Juice is that everything we provide is entirely free. We are a free resource. We are a ministry of the church. And so we are here to serve and support you in however we can within this area of communication and marketing. Church Juice began almost 15 years ago now as a way to give back to churches and to support them in an area that was growing. In 2009, technology, social media, digital communication was really still a very new thing. And so Church Juice began as a way to help churches kind of navigate that transition. And we are still doing that. So we create free articles and resources. We have a podcast. We do webinars like this. We also do workshops, speaking, and one-on-one consulting as well. Any way that we can serve you and your church, that's what we are here for at Church Juice. Any way that we can energize your church's communications. So that's what we do. So that's why we are here. We are going to spend some time, again, diving into websites because I'm sure that you have heard this. I have said it several times, I'm sure, but the church website is really the front door that people experience your church. It is the first impression. And so that is what we need to realize, and we need to cater to that as well, to make sure that we are presenting ourselves and our ministry and what God is doing through our church in the best way possible. So earlier this month, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we listed some of the best church websites that we have found this year. So we reviewed thousands of church websites from across the United States and Canada and put together a list of 20 that we think every church can find inspiration from, can learn from, can maybe find some things that they like or don't like about that. But we hope that you find inspiration from this list and not find it as a something that you only wish or envy that you could be more like, but that you actually find inspiration from. So I want to spend a few minutes talking through some of those websites, what we like about them. And of course, like I said, there's always room for improvement. So what do we think that they could be doing better on this website? So the first one that we're going to spend a couple moments talking about is Christ Church in Deer Park, which is part of Toronto, Ontario area. What I love about Christ Church's website is that it has a clear focus on the Sunday gathering and how they gather as a parish, as an expression of the church. They also, as an Anglican church, are, of course, a very liturgical church. But they really find in their website this mix of traditional and liturgy, history, and they mix it well in the design with this modern, relatable look throughout their website. What I mean by that is even in this picture that you see here on their homepage, right away you can see some of the high church or high liturgy elements of the church. So you see someone wearing a robe, and you see the presentation on the stage as someone is speaking. You see some of that, and you can kind of tell right away that that this Anglican church is really in that mix of liturgy, and they value that. You see right away their service times and that they are worshiping in person and online, and that is a focus on what they're doing. And a lot of the content is focused on that expression of what they do as a church. But the mix of modernity or this modern, refreshing look that they bring to it also comes in things like the colors that they use throughout the website. So they are fresh, they are clean, and more of a modern look than traditional. So traditional, you would think kind of more darker or subtle, natural colors. Modern, you think more of the bright or pastels or bold colors. And so on the homepage here, you see orange calls to action. You see blue or green, whatever that color is. You see that in the text. You see the fonts that they use are sans serif fonts. They are a more modern look to the font. So those are a few things of how they mix that well and what I like about the website. One thing that we noticed as we reviewed the website is that their website is not really optimized for mobile. So if you go and you go to their website on a phone versus a desktop, you get quite a bit of a different experience that on the phone, on a mobile device, the website just doesn't interact or engage well. There's a lot going on there. It's slow to load, and it's not really optimized for someone on their phone. So that's something to think about as well. The next one that I want to point out is Grace Church in Indiana, here in the Midwest. Grace Church is their website is just another expression of the church in a completely different way than the one in Toronto. And what I really like about their website and their ministry as a whole, I assume because of their website, is that they have a really a clear focus on inclusivity and accessibility. And so even throughout the website, you see things like translation capabilities of the site. You see accessibility options. Our little score thing kind of covers up the button, but under that, there's on their website, they have something where if you want to make it, if you have a reader or you are hard of seeing or different things, that there are things that you can select and it changes the experience of the website to optimize it for those needs. You can also see their focus on including people and inclusivity in their calls to action and in their navigation as well. So they focus on their care center. They focus on thrift stores and reaching out to the community and making sure that everyone is included. The other thing that I really like about their website is the hierarchy, the visual hierarchy of the site. So what I mean by that is the text that they use, the size of text that they use. It helps your eyes know where to look. And so that's something that they do well throughout their website. You see right away, looking at this shot here, you can see their tagline, whatever, that first heading, "You were made for more." Right away, you can see the visual separation to what you should read next. And it's that you're invited this Sunday. And then under that is some details and a couple buttons or calls to action. So it's visually, it helps you just know where to look. And so varying text sizes and things like that help readers figure out what to do or where to look with less effort. And so that's something that they do well on their website. Their website is, their pages are large, the size of them. I can't remember exactly why. I think it was a lot of images. Probably some of their accessibility options add size to their pages as well. But their pages overall are pretty large. And so that makes it slow to load. So as someone is looking at a website, if they have a poor internet connection or, something, Wi-Fi goes out, well, I guess that wouldn't really make a difference, but, if you have slow Wi-Fi or whatever, it might take a while for their website to load. And so that makes a difference, of course. If it takes too long, people will leave. People aren't that patient, right? So fast pages, it also impacts how your church shows up on, or your website shows up on search results too. So as people are searching things, fast pages make a difference. So that's something to consider, again, as you think about your website. The third one that we are going to spend a couple minutes talking about today is actually another church in the Midwest. It is Crossroads Church. They are a large multi-site church in, I think, central and southern Ohio and Kentucky. What we love about their website, and really the reason that they even made it to our list, is because they are super focused about their branding and their messaging. They have a clear brand. They have a clear voice style. They have a clear, very clear in their branding and in their messaging about who they are. And you see that all throughout their website. You can see kind of this adventurous look and feel that they have to their site. And that extends into all elements of their ministry. If you go to their social media, you kind of see it extended there pretty clearly as well. So you can see even in their tagline or whatever that is, that first thing that you see at the center of their homepage is "An abundant, adventurous life awaits." So you can kind of see and feel that outdoorsy adventure. The colors speak into that too. And so we just love how on brand and how obsessive they are about that branding. And I mean that in a positive way, that they are confident in who they are as a church. They also use a really great mix of visuals. They engage with videos and pictures and images throughout their website really well. And it's a great mix. And the use of video throughout, a lot of their website just makes the experience that much more interactive and engaging. And so that's something that we love. One of the downsides that I found to their website, though, is that there's not a clear path or a clear focus on first-time guests. So if I'm coming to Crossroads website for the first time and just, maybe I heard something about them and wanted to check it out, it takes a lot of effort to figure out what I'm supposed to do or to answer the questions that I have. Their site isn't really optimized or built for that. And so that's something that could be improved. The last one that we're going to talk about is a church in Florida. Bay Hope Church, bayhope.church is their website. I really love this website because it's just so completely different. It's refreshing, it's fresh, it's got a lot of personality. You can see in the screenshot there that they just have these fun elements and make the experience and make their church just kind of an engaging website and church with some personality. And that's what we really liked about the experience. You can see just some of the, like in that little pop-up on the bottom left, they have just little graphics there, the font that they use throughout the website, some of the way that they add to the visuals with like what looks like drawings, those kinds of things. Those are just little fun elements, and it's really clean. As you look at the website, you would call this a card-based layout, or it really uses a grid layout very well, and it's clean and easy to follow, and it's just easy for a new person to dive in and want to learn more about the church too. One of the things that I think probably what a lot of these elements that we like about the website leads to is that their pages are very large, again, like one of the previous websites that we talked about. So those added elements that you add to the text or to the website, those add sizes. So all of those images that add up, and that means that your pages get pretty large. And so that can negatively impact your website as well. And so that's one of those things that you need to, as you work through optimizing your website or building a website, consider some of those things. And we'll give a list of resources at the end here. We'll give a list of resources that you can use to evaluate your website, to take a look at some of those things that could be negatively impacting your website as well, and how to review that. So so those are a few of the websites that we really love and why we like them. But of course, there's always room for improvement. So I would love to hear from you now. In the chat, if you are watching as a recording, add it as a comment to the video. But from our list of 20 websites, and you can see the list on our website, of course, you can also see a link to the website in the video description. And so I would love to have you go to the website, take a look at all 20 of those websites, and then let me know what's your favorite website that we listed and why. What do you like about that website? What makes it engaging for you, or why is it any different? Why does that one stick out to you? I would love to hear you. Again, add a comment in the below the video today if you're watching as a recording, and just let me know. We would love to hear from you and what you're doing. Let's transition now to talking about some things that you can do, some tips to help you build a website that connects better with your people, with the people that you are trying to reach. So we talked a little bit earlier about how the church's website is really your church's first impact. It makes the first impression on someone who is checking your church out for the first time. They may go to your Facebook page or your Instagram to see more real-time information, but they will go to your website to get that that those answers to the questions that they have. So connecting with your audience, with your website, connecting with the right people is really important, because you want to put your best foot forward, and you want to make sure that you are answering the questions that people are asking, and you're answering the right questions, and you're providing the right information. So here are some ways that we think can help you improve your church's website. The first one is to first know your audience. If you don't know who your website is speaking to or who it's designed for, then you're really not talking to anybody. You're really not creating a site that is going to connect with anybody. So it's really important that you know who your audience is when you talk about your website, or when you think about the design, the content, the images of your website. You need to know who it is that you're trying to design this website for. So here are some questions that you can ask when you are trying to decide who is your website for. It's really critical to ask the right questions. So generally speaking, there are probably two audiences that you could, or maybe are, trying to connect with through your church website. You could be trying to connect with the people who are already connected to your church. So maybe that means things like the digital bulletin, or taking next steps as a result of Sunday, signing up for events, or Bible study information, those kinds of things. So if you're trying to connect with people who are already part of your church, that's one audience. Another audience, though, is one that we probably talk a lot more about, and that is people who are experiencing your church for the first time. So first-time guests, or potential first-time guests. Those are very different questions that someone visiting the website might be asking. If they have no exposure to your church and are checking out your website for the first time, then they need to know the very basic information about when Sunday is, or where you're located. If someone's connected to your church, then they don't ask those questions because they already have the answers, right? So a few of the questions as you think about who it is that you are trying to reach, and hopefully you are trying to reach those first-time guests with your website. The people who are connected to your church, that could be a whole different conversation. You could do a website for both. You could do a second website. There's lots of options there. You could build a website for both, of course. But when we think about people who are coming to your website, or checking out your church for the very first time, those people, those questions that they ask, those are important ones. So questions to ask to help you know your audience better. Why do people come back? So they may check out your church for the first time, but what makes them come back? Chances are you're not the only church in town. There's probably other options, right? And maybe people who are coming to your church for the first or second or third time have also visited some other churches. So what makes them come back to your church? It's a question to ask. It's a question to think about as you build your website. So why do they visit again? What led to that decision? It's an intentional choice that they made, probably pretty early on in the process too. So knowing why they came back can help you as you think about who your audience is. That makes that kind of helps you decide, or not decide, that helps you define a little bit about what makes your church your church. And that leads to the second question. What makes your church unique? Like I said a minute ago, there are probably several churches in your town or in the area. What makes your church your church? So one of the ways to find that out is to ask people why they come back. But another way is to really take a moment and think through what makes your church unique. What is your church's personality? Why does your church matter? What difference are you making in your community? So what makes your church unique? That's important information, because that's what you should be focusing on your website. The third question to ask is, what are people asking? What are their needs? What do they think their needs are when they come to your website? What questions are they asking, and how do we answer that? Do we answer it well on our website? Do we know the right questions that people are asking? And how do you provide answers for those needs that people have? What draws them to your website, and how do you answer that? Or if you're thinking about creating more content, or you're thinking about catering to people who are not connected to your church, what questions are people asking in your community? Maybe not connected directly to the church, but how could you, as a church, answer those questions for people? How could you provide an authority, educated answer for the questions and the needs that people have in your area? Those are things that can really help define your website, who your audience is. Beyond the questions, there is, of course, objective information that you could be collecting to help decide who your website should be, or who your target audience is as you think about your website too. So the first way to gather some of that information, that data, is to look at your website analytics. If you use Google Analytics, or whoever your website provider uses as an analytics source, you should be able to find a ton of information about people who are coming to your website. You may be able to have a decent idea about basic demographics like gender, age, maybe even interests or lifestyle, or some of those unique things about people. And you could gather some more meta level information that way. But you can also get information about who's coming to your website in the way of how are they getting there? What are they doing once they get to your website? What are they interested in? What pages do they go to? What is the journey that they take on your website? And when do they leave? Why? Those are things that you can actually answer from your analytics and from the data that you can get from your website itself. Another way to gather information for your website is to look at your church's database. Your church database hopefully has some pretty accurate, pretty updated information about people who are part of your church, or historically have been part of your church. And so you can gather a lot more of those data points that you care about for your church community, because that probably impacts who your target audience is as well. You may find that you skew toward one age group that maybe you don't realize on Sunday, because you do kind of have a spread out group. But when you look at the data overall, you realize that, hey, this age group actually does have a larger influence, a larger impact on our church. And so there's implications with that, right? So you can find things like that. But beyond ages or whatever, your database can really provide a lot of valuable information as you think through who your audience is for your church, which also leads to who your audience is for your website. There are tons of other tools too. If you're looking for information about your broader community, maybe to help that felt need question that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So you can look at census data. You can look at tons of other insights for your community or for the church. And so I would take some time and look at the data and information that you can gather to help you decide who your audience is for your church and for your website. The second thing to help you improve your church's website is that your website must be responsive. All right, so what do I mean by that? First of all, it's really interesting to realize, because a lot of us here today, you are most likely watching this on a computer. But more than half of all of the traffic across the internet, all of website traffic, more than half, 61% of all website traffic is coming from a mobile device. So your website might have varying degrees to this, but overall, more than half of all internet traffic is coming from someone's cell phone. And as we think about how we use our phones, it's also interesting that 92% of people who use the internet access at different points, of course, access the internet through their phones at some point. So we use our phones to access the internet, but we also use computers, right? So what do I mean by a responsive website? A responsive website is one that looks great whether you are on a computer desktop or you are on a cell phone or you are on a tablet. It is optimized for whatever screen size, and it changes the look and feel of the site to make sure that it is consistent across sizes of screen. It creates a consistent, not identical experience. Because if you're on a cell phone, that means that you probably need larger buttons than you would on a desktop, because using a finger to tap something means that you need more space to do that, right? So it creates a clean experience, a consistent experience across all devices. Let me show you an example of what I mean here. We look at Northpoint, which is another one of the websites that we listed on our 2023 list. Northpoint is a church outside of Atlanta, a multi-site church, one of the largest in the United States. And they have a really incredible website. On the left side of this screen, you can see what it looks like on a desktop. If you go on your computer right now, you go to their website, this is what you will see. You'll see it's very clean. There's a lot of space for the visuals that are there. There's a clear call to action, one call to action that is up kind of snug next to that tagline, that line that they have, that headline that they have, and it's under the logo. Now, if you look at that same website on a mobile phone, it responds to the size of your screen, and it changes the look and feel of it so that you have a consistent experience. So what do I mean by that? Well, when you look at that right side, or you go to the website, Northpoint's website on your phone, what you see is that the logo is a little bit different. You don't see a menu across the top. You see a large search icon, and you see a large hamburger menu, or that thing that you tap on and it opens the menu. You can see their tagline still, of course, and you can see that the button, the Join Us Sunday button, is much larger here, right? In comparison. It's much larger, making it easier for you on a phone to tap on it. It also has information toward the bottom of the homepage there. The information about Sundays and watching us is a little bit larger, making it easier to read. So the website responds to the size of the screen that you are coming to their website on. If your website does not do that, then you need to rethink, maybe redesign your website and make sure that you are building it for a consistent experience across all device sizes, because so much of our traffic comes from people using their phones, and we use our phones to search for traffic or to search for websites. So that's really what a responsive website is. If you have built a website in the last 5 years, then hopefully it is a responsive website. That's different than a mobile version of a website. You want one experience that is consistent across all screen sizes. And so creating a responsive website will really help you connect with people better through your website. So something to think about. The next thing is to design simply, which is really hard to do. Designing simply means that you are using good design skills. You are minimizing the clutter. You are maximizing the experience. So you are thinking first about how people are engaging, are interacting, or are experiencing your website, and you are designing for that. So you need to design it simply so that the experience is as best as it can be. The opposite of that is a cluttered, hard to follow website that is more frustrating than adds value. So one way to do that is to focus on, to focus on white space. A lot of us are afraid of white space. Sometimes when I will design something, a print brochure or something like that. My wife, who is also a graphic designer, will accuse me of not using enough white space. I always hug the edges a little too much, or don't provide enough space for content to breathe. That's white space, negative space. It doesn't necessarily mean that the space is white, but it is space that offers room to breathe around your content. So it provides both visually a space for people to take a breath, to kind of realize the separation in content. That's what white space does. It also helps you design your website to have elements connected together that make sense, and separate those with space. So a lot of church websites are like me when I design something for print. Used to, we're afraid of white space. We don't want too much white space because we think that we need to put as much information as high up on the site or on the page as possible, which is not the case. The visual, the breathing space that white space or negative space allows makes people feel more comfortable, more at ease as they interact with your white space, or as they interact with your website. There are a few ways to do this. The design overall, of course, but we can also use white space, use negative area, negative space in the content as well. So you can see here, text can be too tight, but it can also be too loose, too much white space. So you want to make sure that your elements that are connected are visually connected. Too tight, it's hard to read, right? It's hard to follow, hard to do that. Too much space in your text or in your paragraphs, whatever, then it looks separated. And so you kind of jump around. Your eyes just naturally don't follow that. So finding the balance there is important. Another example of doing white space incorrectly. Again, for this example on the screen right here, you can see that we're talking about a form that someone is filling out on your website. The example on the left, it's hard visually. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of brain effort to figure out, especially in the middle of that form field, what is the title or the descriptor? Which field does that go to? It takes some effort to think through that and make sure that you're making the right connection. But when you group elements together visually, like the example on the right, you can see very easily with little effort how the first name field goes with the box and so on down the field. And so that that's an example of how you can use white space in something like a form that people are filling out. And that can make a difference, even in how people are converting or submitting forms. If it's hard to do, it's easy to bail, right? So we want to lower the barrier and make sure that we use white space well to offer connecting points where it makes sense. The other thing to think about is colors on your website. Of course, colors go along with your church's brand. Excuse me. But there's much more to colors that we use and the way that we engage with different colors. There is color theory, color psychology. There's tons of research about what colors to use and where. But what's really important is that you think through what colors you are using on your website and be intentional about those colors to make sure that they're easy to read, easy to understand, that they make sense in the broader picture of your church. If your church is, if your church branding is all blue and green in your church building or wherever you have brand messaging, then your website should follow that as well, right? You don't want to throw out a lot of orange and yellow if blue and green is kind of your color scheme. So there's that, of course. But there's also the consistency that provides between all elements, in person, online, your website, social media, print. You want to make sure that you have consistent brand look and feel. You want to make sure that your website is easy to identify. So colors matter in that. It's easy to read. So colors matter on that. A yellow text on top of white background is hard to read. So make sure that there's contrast. There are tools to help you do that. Check the contrast of your colors. And again, we'll provide a link to that and the resources that we provide with this webinar. So you can access that at the end of today's conversation. But the colors that we use on our website do matter. And people feel a certain way. Colors can do that. Same as the words we use. They can convey, they can provide conviction, they can provide empathy. There's a lot that can happen with the colors that we use. So something to think about as you think through how to design your website, or how do you create a consistent experience for people who are engaging with your church. The other thing that goes along with those colors is the fonts that you use, typography. It's really important that we think through, make sure that we are using readable fonts that work on websites across the internet. There's a statement here: if a website's typography works, we don't notice. If it fails, then we'll leave. So if you use a hard to read font, then it's a lot easier to leave. But if you use something that is easy to read, easy to follow, people will engage with your website. So things like colors, fonts, they really do matter. The other thing that I want to touch on real quick is your website navigation, or the menu, the things that you see across the top. How you construct the menu actually does make a difference with how people interact with your website. When we go to a website, our eyes kind of bounce in an F pattern or a Z shape as well. So these can really impact, first of all, how we see your menu. So because our eyes kind of bounce around, we also tend to see the first and last items in a menu before we see the middle. But going back, when we think about our website navigation, we should be thinking through a person's journey as they visit our website. And that's really how you should build your menu for your website, is thinking through their journey. So what is the first thing that someone needs to do? That should be the first item on your menu. What's the second thing that someone probably wants to do when they visit our website? That should be number 2. What's number 3 or 4? Those should all be really a process or a pathway as someone visits our website. How do they engage with what we're doing? How do they get more information? How do they deepen that relationship? And that's really what your menu should be doing, is it should be building that relationship from very first experience to, donate, or being an active member in your in your church, or volunteering, something like that. Whatever, someone who is fully engaged with your church. That's probably to the far right of your website. A good example here is Real Life Church in Sacramento, California. Across the middle of their header, you can see their menu, and it is that pathway, that process that I talked about. The first thing that someone's going to ask when they come to your website is questions that can probably be found on an about page. So basic information about your church. That's probably a first step for Real Life. The next thing that someone wants to do is to figure out, how do they connect with the church? What do you offer? The next thing that Real Life puts on their website is to watch a sermon or a recent service. After someone watches, then they visit. After they're part of the church, then they give. So you can see the process here, the pathway that someone takes for Real Life Church in Sacramento. And they do that really well. And that's something to think through as you build out your website. All right, we're running out of time. And so let me go through these real quick and then spend some time answering your questions. So number 4 of our 6 is to know the next step. What do you want someone to do? What is it that that you are inviting them into? When someone goes to your website, what do you want them to do? Tell them what you want them to do. That should be your call to action. Don't don't make it difficult for people to figure out how to get more involved or to figure out what their next step is. So when we think about the decisions that we make throughout the day, often we make bigger, it's easier for us to make bigger decisions earlier in the day. And as the day goes on, we get decision fatigue. We're tired of making decisions. Our brain gets worn out. Decision fatigue also happens on websites. So we put way too many options up there, or we don't provide a clear path for someone as they are exploring more about the church, or we put too much information about something that someone doesn't care about. So we need to figure out how do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Your website is telling a story, no matter what. But if you really want people to connect with you, with your church through your website, then your website needs to invite people into the story. So how can you invite people into the story of what God is doing in your church? What are you inviting them into? What story are you telling? That is the next step as people think through this. You're telling your story, you're inviting them into the story. How do I get involved in this story? Clear calls to action, simple calls to action, make a difference and make that decision fatigue as minimal as possible. So tell me what you want me to do. Tell me what the next step is. Provide that in a button and continue to provide that. One, maybe two calls to action on the homepage, or every step along the way is really the best way that you can do that. Make it super clear about what you want people to do and how they can get deeper into the story, if you will. Number 5 is to optimize. All right. So think like a guest. Go to your website. Think like a first-time guest. What is the experience? We have thousands of messages thrown at us any day. Think about your inbox right now. You probably have dozens, if not hundreds, of emails sitting there. Think about how, I have a picture here of Times Square. Think about if you've ever been to Times Square, then you know how bombarding, how loud the messages are. Everything is bright and loud and big because everyone is fighting for your attention. And that's Times Square, right? But that's how we go through life. That's how we go through every day. Everyone is fighting for our attention. And as the church, you are also fighting for the attention of people who are already part of your church, trying to get them connected or trying to make sure that they feel informed and feel like they are an engaged part of your church. When you go to a website as a first-time guest, what is your website experience? Think about that. So think like a guest. Think about it like someone who has no idea what they're doing or is totally distracted. What does your website provide? What is that story, again, that you're inviting people into? Does it give them reprieve? Does it give them space to ask questions? Does it give them the information that they need and that they want? Or are you bombarding them with information that is not super relevant when they need it? So think like a guest. Optimize your site and think about that. For the sake of time, I will throw the other principles that we were going to talk about. I will throw those in with the resources that we provide following the webinar. So you can find a link to that at the end of today's webinar. And I'll make sure we were going to talk about, just real briefly, how to update content or create a schedule to update content, talk about images, how to use images that resonate with the story that you're trying to share, how to help people with a little bit more with that decision fatigue, and help people get more involved. So I will throw all of that in the resources that we provide, because I want to make sure that we have time to answer some of your questions. A lot of you asked some really great questions throughout today's webinar, and I just want to highlight a few that we have time for. So Renee, you asked, what do you like or not like about the slideshow or scrolling kind of websites versus card-based design? What several studies have found is that when you have those slideshows, and what I mean by slideshow is not necessarily images themselves that change, but a slideshow of rotating announcements, where you have the carousel of, join us Sunday. The second slide is men's breakfast on Saturday. The third slide is our Easter egg hunt sign up. The fourth slide is VBS information, etc. What several studies have shown is that people don't follow through. They don't click through when you have multiple slides there. They might sit there and watch it, but it doesn't increase the engagement. It actually decreases the engagement because those second, third, fourth announcement slides are hidden, right? You have to wait for 15 seconds before it to rotate or click the button. And so you'll see some church websites, or you do see some businesses that have that rotating. But studies show, regardless of the industry, that that it doesn't positively impact your website. If you're relying on that to convey information, then you're missing out, and it's a waste of time and space and resources. So I think that's what you're referring to when you ask about the slideshow. If you're asking about just that homepage space where images change, or you have a video or whatever, I think that's great. That's engaging. It helps people kind of see what's going on in your church. And a lot of the websites, I was about to say all, but it's not all. A lot of the websites on our list have that hero area, that top of the homepage. They do change images, but it's in the background. It's not, announcements or things like that. When we talk about card-based design, that's really what that is it's using a grid. So if you split up your screen like a grid, and you created, squares and rectangles to fill the space, that's what card-based designs utilize. You see that with things like Pinterest. You see it more on Facebook now. You have more cards, more tiles is another way to say that. A lot of the websites that are on our list use card-based design. So there's tons of ways to that. It provides visual space again around that content block of whatever it is. You have some space of the background, gray, whatever color. So it provides visual separation. It provides a nice clean look. So there's things to do that. You don't have to have a card-based design to have a great website. But there are lots of websites that utilize that, and I think it's becoming more and more popular too. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. If not, feel free to reach out and ask in a more clarified way if I didn't provide the right response there. Next question. Mavis says, I see Christ Church Deer Park says it mixes the high church liturgy with modernity, but is there an example of what this looks like? The words don't mean a lot to me. So what really is modernity or a modern look? So I got into this a little bit. What I meant by kind of mixing that look, the two looks of high church or liturgical or traditional with that modern look and feel, is that they the church's website doesn't shy away from the fact that they are an Anglican parish. And so you see images of what Sunday looks like when they gather as the church. But they also are not neglecting the 21st century in their website design, if that makes sense. So yes, they are a liturgical church. They are a traditional church. They have readings in church. They do the whole traditional church look and feel. That's what I mean by liturgical, I guess, or traditional. But they are not catering. They are reaching a group that is probably 20s, 30s, 40s, people who are very much in the 21st century, and they are not shying away from their Anglican roots, and that's who they are as an identity. But they are connecting well with people who are busy and are maybe looking for a church to connect to, don't necessarily care that it's an Anglican church, I guess. Or maybe they do, but they don't want all of the tradition with it. I don't know. But like I said, the fonts, the colors, they're not shying away from being modern and embracing that a little bit too. So so I hope that answers a little bit or provides a little bit more clarity on your question there. But yeah, I think they mix the two well, and they don't hide either one of them. So they connect well with people now, but they don't shy away from, and they embrace their historical liturgy and methodology of doing church. So Douglas, next question. You asked, how should one think about how a website functions compared to social media like Facebook or Instagram? How does a website best function within the larger picture of a church's communication strategy? Great question. I would say that social media versus website, they should both be part of your communication strategy. Absolutely. Social media is meant to be social, right? So you want to engage with people, meaning that they interact with your content. You want to be social in that you are sharing something that is relevant today, now. So it is a lot more real time, a lot more just social in the way that we share and interact with content on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media platform. Your website is less social because there's less relationship or two-way engagement there. It is really me as a website visitor interacting with the site itself, interacting with information about your church, the basics. So you can put a lot more information on a website than you can on social media. So I would, if you don't have like a central place that you send people all the time for information, meaning that you put everything in an email, you put everything on the website, you put everything in the print bulletin, you put everything, I don't know, wherever else you have stuff on your app, whatever. So if you don't have that, just a central place that you send people all the time, your website's a great place, and your social media then can link back to your website or can point people to your website. But your website can be a lot more static if you're not using it for real-time things like that. So it can function a lot more in that way, and provide a lot more information than you could on social media. So both are very important for a church's communication strategy. Someone may find your church on Facebook or Instagram, but they will always go to your website, is what I would say. And so that's where you want to make sure that you're providing those answers that people are asking, the basics, the telling the story a little bit in your church. Felix, you asked, what are the kinds of things we want our website visitors to do as a next step? Great question. So I talked about how having one, maybe two calls to action, or providing next steps every step along the way, right? So Felix is asking, what are things that we ask people to do as a next step? From your homepage, it may be something like learn more about us, or how to watch a service. So if someone's coming to your website for the first time, what is it that they want to do? You can use the data that I talked about collecting earlier. You can use conversations or those questions. So your church might be a little bit different than another church about how people are interacting with your website. or what they expect. But generally speaking, I would say you want to point people to learn more about who you are as a church, what makes your church, your unique story. Get people to learn more about that. You want to get website visitors to probably watch a recent service or watch online. I think in almost all conversations I've had with churches over the last year or so, new visitors watch online even for several weeks before they attend in person. So that could be a next step. It could be taking part in a large community event or outreach event. That could be Easter Sunday. That could be a community food truck night. It could be a lot of things. If you have something that is community oriented or outreach oriented as an event, that's easy to invite people into. Of course, eventually you want to invite people as a next step to visit you in person, or plan to visit you in person if you can follow up and follow through with someone planning a visit with you. So those are a few next steps. But I would take a look and see how people are interacting with your websites, with your website. What pages do they go to? And maybe that can help provide some clear, actionable items for you. So I hope that you found today edifying. I hope that you found it encouraging. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can email me. My email address is Bryan, Bryan, @churchjuice.com. Following today's webinar, we will send you this recording, of course. We will also send you a link to access the slides from today, so you can go back and make notes. We will also send you links to helpful resources like the color contrast checker and a couple other things that I mentioned, and a website evaluation form that you can take yourself and figure out where you can make improvements on your website. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I love to engage with people like you, with church communicators like you. That's what I'm here for. That's what we as Church Juice are here for. So feel free to reach out to us, use us as a resource. And I also encourage you to join the Facebook group if you haven't already. So in our Facebook group, we provide exclusive content and materials. We have great discussions with hundreds of church communicators from really across the U.S. and Canada. And I invite you into that discussion as well. Well, thank you for taking an hour out of your day today. Thank you for engaging with this topic too. And if we can do anything for you to support you or serve you to help you energize your church's communications, please do reach out. Thank you. Have a great day.